Okay, so I'm back. Um, so I was just mentioning about how even when you're in a relationship with God, difficult times, storms come. Storms will come. Storms come because of who you are. At times, because of things that you've done. At times, storms just come because God wants to guide you and teach you. Storms come because of other people. And I'm wanting to point out here again that Jacob continued to go through storms. And then we went through Joseph having the dreams of the chiefs bowing down to him. His brothers are like, oh, what are we going to bow down to you? The sun and the moon was the next dream, and the stars, 11 stars, bowing down to him. His father's like, are we going to bow down to you? Remember this dream. Remember these dreams. And then his brothers was so jealous and angry of him that they sold him into slavery. And little Joey's gone. They take that coat of many colors. They dip it in blood. They say, hey Dad. Hey Papa. Is this the coat of Joseph? And surely it was the coat of Joseph. And his father weeps and says, don't you stop me from weeping. I'm going to go to Sheol weeping for my son Joseph. But they sold him into slavery. Down to Egypt Joseph went. We see that he was sold in Egypt to a man named Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. Now continuing, we're going to read, we have this wild chapter in between about another incident. We're going to read that. It's about one of Jacob's sons, Judah, and Tamar, which was Judah's daughter-in-law. Continuing, Genesis 38. It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned aside to a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hirah. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. He took her and went into her, and she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. Yet again she bore a son, and she called his name Shelah. Judah was in Chizib when she bore him. And Judah took a wife for Er, his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother. This was a This was a duty, he says, what was to be done in their custom. But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. So whenever he went into his brother's wife, he would waste the semen on the ground, so as not to give offspring to his brother. And what he did was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow in your father's house till Shelah, my son, grows up." For he feared that he would die like his brothers. So Tamar went and remained in her father's house. In the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. Okay. When Judah was comforted, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, he and his friend Hirah, the Adullamite. And when Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep," she took off her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, wrapping herself up, and sat at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. So here we have what's happening here, right? We've got Judah had a son. He got wiped out. He had a wife. The brothers to go into her, because she had no children, to bear children for the brother that just died. He decided not to do that because he knew it wouldn't be his child, his offspring. Then God wiped him out. Judah says, "Wait for Shelah until he gets older, and then he will go into you and bear children for the brothers." The firstborn, at least. And Shelah didn't get that, okay? So we're going to read that. I'm actually telling a bit of the story ahead of time in a way. But Judah's going up to the sheep shearers. Tamar, takes off her widow's clothes, puts on wraps herself up in some other garments. Here, she sits at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown up, and she had not been given to him in marriage. For she saw that, okay. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. So she dresses up, goes to the gate to the city, where he's going to get these sheep sheared, dresses up as if she's a prostitute. Judah thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He turned to her at the roadside and said, "Come, let me come into you." For he did not know that she was the daughter-in-law. That was his daughter-in-law. He did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me, that you may come into me?" He answered, "I will send you a young goat from the flock." And she said, "If you give me a pledge until you send it." He said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She said, "Your signet, and your cord, and your staff that is in your hand." So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood. Okay, I hope that this is clear. What's happened here? He then goes into Tamar because she deceived him, acting like a prostitute. She gets pregnant, and she's also got these pledges, basically to get the payment for the whoredom. And which she's just crafty in getting her child. The Bible doesn't exactly call this. She acted as if she was a prostitute. We'll leave it at that, okay? She takes his signet, which is like a ring, cord, which I'm not exactly sure what that was for them. It probably was something that hung off their garment, and his staff. Anyhow, he gave them to her to let her know he's going to come back and give her what is a young goat from the flock. Okay? Continuing. When Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adullamite to take back the pledge from the woman's hand, he did not find her. And he asked the men of the place, "Where is the cult prostitute who was at Enaim at the roadside?" And they said, "No cult prostitute has been here." So he returned to Judah and said, "I have not found her." Also the men of the place said, "No cult prostitute has been here." And Judah replied, "Let her keep the things as her own, or we shall be laughed at. You see, I sent this young goat, and you did not find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been immoral. Moreover, she is pregnant by immorality." And Judah said, "Bring her out, and let her be burned." As she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law, "By the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant." She had the signet, the cord, and his staff. And she said, "Please identify whose these are." So she sends to Judah, the man who had sex with her, who had conceived by, which was her father-in-law, sends him his stuff back and says, "The person who I'm pregnant by, this is his stuff." After he just said, "Let her be burned," she says, "Please identify whose these are, the signet and the cord and the staff." Then Judah identified them and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah, and he did not know her again." That is, have sex with her. Yeah. Know her. Okay? Enter into her. She was really crafty on getting her son, wasn't she? She's wild. Tamar's a wild one. She's a wild one, man. She's a wild one. She's wild, wild, wild. I just listen to this story. This is, and yet look at the hypocrisy of Judah. I mean, he has to admit himself, this lady's more righteous than I am. I'm just I'm a hypocrite, deceitful hypocrite. You know. When the time of her labor came, there were twins in her womb. So not only does she have one child, she has twins. And when she was in labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." But as he drew back his hand, behold, his brother came out. And she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterward, his brother came out with the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Zerah. Okay. Now, this now takes us to Joseph again. So we got like this story in the middle of Joseph, and it's a good reminder that we should be mindful of little Joey. Joseph here, he's over here, he's suffering over there. Sold as a slave, away from his kin, doesn't have the comforts that a normal human being really gets. This man is a slave in a nation that is not, he has, what a wild one. But that story right there, I was just talking in the video beforehand about hypocrisies and people doing people wrong. And again, it's people who are close to this, to Tamar and Tamar to Judah. It's these people that are close in relation with each other that get into this whole schism of prostitution and someone's about to be burned to death because of it. But God's hand is on the whole thing. God's hand is on the whole thing. And you know what? Jesus comes through the line of one of these children that Tamar bore. Through the line of Judah. Jesus is the King of Judah. So even in the midst of all of this wild stuff that just happened, because Judah didn't give Shelah, his son, to Tamar, still we got the thread of God's love coming through all of the chaos. Yes. But listen, what we have to be mindful of, we have to be mindful of God's hand with us. You know what? Just give me just a moment. I don't want to overrun you with too many words here. Look at this. In the book of Matthew, the book of the genealogy, Matthew chapter 1, you can read, and Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah, by Tamar, and Perez, the father of Hezron, and Hezron, the father of Ram. I was going through the genealogy of Jesus of Nazareth. So he comes through this whole chaotic situation. I just feel compelled to pull that out of there because, boom. Now this is occurring approximately 1900, 2000 BC. Okay, the time of Jacob's children and little Joseph. 1900 BC. Okay, that's what we're looking at. All right? And then, about 400 years later, we got Moses popping up. And I'll emphasize more of that so that it's more clear. Genesis 39. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord, it says, was with Joseph. Genesis 39:2. And continue. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house, and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in house and field. Who was with Joseph? The Lord. Yahweh was with Joseph in his slavery, in bondage. So, Potiphar, who's realizing Joseph got his everything he touches is blessed by God. Potiphar, it says, so he left all that he had in Joseph's charge. And because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. Left everything in Joseph's charge. Because the Lord was blessing all of what Potiphar had because of Joseph. He noticed that everything Joseph touched was blessed. It just became, it worked. It became abundant. It just happened very well. Worked out very well. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And after a time his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me my master has no concern about anything in the house." And he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except yourself, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, and to be with her. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there in the house, she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled out of the house. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of the house of her household and said to them, "See, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. Then he laid up his garment Then she laid up his garment beside, excuse me. Then she laid up his garment by her until his master came home. And she told him the same story, saying, The Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us came in to me to laugh at me. But as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled out of the house. As soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, This is the way your servant treated me, she said. His anger was kindled, and Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison. The place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was in charge of all the... Okay. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. So, now, after the Lord has blessed Joseph, and Potiphar puts him in charge of everything in his house. The Lord has blessed Joseph. Here comes Potiphar's wife to come, and she wants Joseph to have sex with her. After he's been put in charge of everything of Potiphar's house. He says, all that my master has given me, he's no greater than I, really. The only thing he's kept from me is you. Leave me alone. That's what he was saying to her. Leave me alone. But she even continued to do this, and then once people were out of the house, she said it again. She grabbed his garment as he tried to run away, waited with the garment, told the other people, the others who were the servants, waited for Potiphar to get back and said Joseph tried to go into her, acting, crying, when it was her the whole time. And Joseph was trying to run away from her, trying to get away from her. He knew that God's hand was upon the whole thing. He knew that God was blessing him. But look what happened to him. In the midst of God's hand and blessing, here he's in a situation where he has to run. He does what's right. He does run, and then Potiphar is definitely angry at Joseph and puts him in prison. But Potiphar must have had some kind of inkling, likely given by the Lord, that she was lying. That she wasn't telling the truth. You know why? It's likely Potiphar had that inkling, because he didn't just cut Joseph's head off right there. He didn't just kill him. He had something, some kind of I think. So guess what? Joseph gets put in prison. And while he's in prison, the Bible says that the Lord was with him. Who was with Joseph? The Lord was with Joseph and blessed him while he was in prison. And the keeper of the guard put him over everything in the prison. And he didn't worry about anything because Joseph was in charge. He didn't pay attention to anything, it says, that was in Joseph's charge. Because, it says that was in Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him. And it says whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. End of chapter. Now, I want that. Although no one wants the prison, right? The sufferings, the challenges. And Joseph didn't either. We'll read that. But I just wanna point out some things here. You see these things that are going on? It's miraculous to see that God is with Joseph in this way. It's a wonderful thing. Whatever was in the house or in the field, within Potiphar's situation, it was all blessed. And Potiphar knew that. It was all blessed. So look at what happened. If we just go back and we look at what's happened in Joseph's life, sold to be a slave because God was with him, exalted him in Potiphar's house, and then here comes this woman that's going to try and have a sexual relationship with him, and he still is faithful. And he says, no, 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 no. She deceives and says that he tried to make sport of her. He tried to laugh at me. And Joseph gets thrown into prison. Now, I'm not too sure. I mean, I would have a hard time if I was put in that situation. But look, it says the Lord was with Joseph. So you might think, in our day and age, if somebody's going through hardship and hard time, that the Lord isn't with that person. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. The Lord wasn't with his wife. The Lord wasn't with them. The Lord wasn't it doesn't mention all that. It says with Joseph. You think this wasn't tearing Joseph apart? This man had his heart, I think he seriously had his heart broken. But he's a faithful person to God, and he didn't try and kill himself. He didn't give up. He didn't stop. He continued to believe that God was with him. He continued to trust the Lord and the Lord's hand upon him. He continued to walk strong in the faith. He continued to love the Lord. No matter what chaos was happening around him, because of people around him. No matter what was going on. He continued in the faith. He stayed strong. He trusted in the steadfast love of the Lord, the loyalty, the hand of God, the continued oversight of God. He let be in his life. Now, this is what God is saying, I will do for you. He wants to do that for us. For all who trust and believe in what his son Jesus did for him. He's saying, I will be with you in this way. Even in the hardships, even in the suffering. Now, Joseph didn't cause these things to happen to himself. Other people was doing this to him, pushing him around and shoving him. So some of us, let's think about this though. Some of us have done things that have caused ourselves trouble. Alright? Some of us have done things that have brought trouble into our own lives. But for whatever reason, it's this, it's that, it could be this, it could be that. But but oftentimes and very likely, non-stop, you're trying to put God first in your life. God sees when you're trying to put him first and you're trying to let him oversee you. When you want him to be watching over you, where you know the Lord was with this person, say. The Lord was with, say in whose case? You alright? We'll say it for ourselves, right? The Lord was with. The Lord was with. And this is what I wanted to be. Right? You can put, why don't you want to put your name there? Right? Let the Lord bless me. The Lord was with, say, Michael. The Lord was with Jeremy. The Lord was with. The Lord was with. And that's what we're looking for here. That's what we want. And no matter what is happening around you, no matter, yeah, right? The Lord was with Sarah, right? The Lord was with Kimberly. This is where God wants to take us. He wants you to be there now. He wants you to get to that place now, but also realize that challenges and struggles come. All right? And he can pull you out of those things, and he can give you the insight. This is what we want. We want the insight. We want the awareness that whatever's happening around us, we keep our cool. We watch our mouths. We walk wisely, and we walk obediently, which is, we just need to see ourselves as a daily relationship. The Lord is with this one today. Right? Genesis 40. Sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them. They continued for some time in custody. And one night they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, each his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces downcast today?" They said to him, "We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell me." Please tell them to me. So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." Then Joseph said to him, "This is its interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. And you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly, when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh." Only remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the pit. So we see Joseph. We got a dream here. Joseph interprets this man's dream, the cupbearer of Pharaoh, properly. And Joseph remembers. You can see, I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing. For I was indeed stolen. And here also I have done nothing that they should put me into this pit. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh. But the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head." And Joseph answered and said, "This is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants, and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, and Joseph had interpreted to them, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Now, for the sake of us not suffering, I guess I might just have to keep reading. But here we have Joseph interpreting the dreams of the cupbearer of Pharaoh and the chief baker of Pharaoh. As Joseph interpreted the cupbearer's dream, he interpreted properly. He was lifted up to hand Pharaoh back, place the cup back into Pharaoh's hand. But then, after that, in that same day, the baker was killed and hanged, as Joseph had interpreted that he would be put to death. So let me see. So can we relate? Can we suffer with Joseph? Huh? He's going through it. He's got this insight. He's got this wisdom. We know what just happened in that story. I just read it. I like how he says to them after they had their dreams. He says, "Do not interpretations belong to God?" He's honoring God. He's not taking credit for it. He knows the one true God. Now, I just want to mention, after 2 years, I'm probably going to read chapter 41 as well. I feel like I could have stopped right after 39. And I just kept on reading. This story, the story of the cupbearer and the baker, these are really, really sweet stories. Here we see Joseph has the ability to interpret dreams. Now, I want to take some time on these things, and I feel like I'm kind of like caught in the midst of this wonderful story, but let's just mention that even still, this is what we need to remember. Even still, while Joseph was in the prison, The Lord was with him. The Lord was with him. Deep inside my heart, I do not want to keep Joseph in prison in our story. So I'm just thinking here. I'm thinking here. Hey, life gets hard. Life is challenging. These are good reminders. These are good reminders that when life is hard, God can work and He can bless. Any of you guys want to see Joseph get out? Get out of this prison? Get out of this suffering that he didn't do anything that should have him in that pit? You guys want to see him get out? Because that's really how hearts should be. Maybe you feel like that. Maybe you feel like you're in the pit. Times are hard. But taking this insight, taking this understanding, that if you be with the Lord Jesus and on His side, you're going to be alright. Let's continue. Let's get Joseph up out of here. Genesis 41. After 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile. After 2 whole years, he interpreted these men's dreams, and they happened. And after 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile. And behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows attractive and plump. And they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after them, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly thin cows ate up the 7 attractive plump cows. And Pharaoh awoke, and he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump, full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So in the morning his spirit was troubled, And he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, I remember my offenses today. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, we dreamed on the same night, he and I, each having a dream with its own interpretation. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came about. I was restored to my office, and the chief baker was hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Behold, in my dream I was standing on the banks of the Nile. 7 cows, plump and attractive, came up out of the Nile and fed in the reed grass. 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and thin, such as I have never seen in all the land of Egypt. And the thin, ugly cows ate up the first 7 plump cows. But when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were still as ugly as the beginning. Then I awoke. I also saw in my dream 7 ears growing on one stalk, full and good. 7 ears, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears blighted by the east wind are also 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be known in the land by reason of the famine that will follow. For it will be very severe. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. Now therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years, and let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. So, I just read the story. It's a wonderful story. And we see Pharaoh has dreams. The magicians cannot interpret the dream. The cupbearer that was lifted back up remembered that Joseph, the Hebrew, interpreted his dream properly. Remembered Joseph 2 years later. He said he was there, locked up, and he interpreted his dream properly. Pharaoh sent for Joseph. And Joseph cleaned up, stood before Pharaoh, and the main thing, one of the great things he says before Pharaoh is, "It is not in me." God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Pharaoh then tells Joseph these dreams about how 7 big, fat, plump cows, nice and healthy, come out. And then all of a sudden after, 7 lean cows come up, eat the 7 fat, plump cows. And then they're still ugly and thin. Pharaoh fell asleep, had that other dream. 7 full ears growing on one stalk. Big, nice, full and good. And then 7 ears withered thin and blighted by the east wind sprouted after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And Joseph says, here's God's answer. God has revealed to you what he's going to do in the future. 7 years, it's going to be 7 good full years of grain. It's full and good. The next 7 years, there's going to be a famine that's going to scorch the land. And you need to set up storehouses to save grain, save food for the 7 years of famine that's going to come. And he says, this is the interpretation of your dream. So he answered Pharaoh, and Pharaoh was like, oh man, it all makes sense now. Pharaoh, I mean, what an amazing thing that Joseph, remember little Joey, who was struggling, who was sold into slavery, beaten and battered by his brothers, pushed down into a pit, right? Sold into slavery. Unloved, unwanted, hated. Seemed like no one cared about him. Here we go. Lifted up by God at Potiphar's house. practically raped by Potiphar's wife, ran away, thrown into a pit. God exalted him while he was in the pit to oversee all these things. He interprets two people's dreams, and it both comes to pass. They forgot him. The one forgot him, the cupbearer. He says he remembers his offense, so he's like, oh my goodness, this is really a big offense. He bad. But anyway, God gave Pharaoh a dream 2 years later. After the cupbearer and the baker had their dreams, God gives Pharaoh a dream 2 years later. The cupbearer remembers Joseph interpreted properly his dream, and the baker for Pharaoh. Let's get Joseph out of there. Let's see how he can interpret. And it says, this proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this, in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards to the throne I will be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him ride in his second chariot, and they called out before him, bow the knee. They called out before Joseph, bow the knee. Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah. Zaphenath-Paneah. And he gave him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Now, now this is the meat falling off the bone, baby. Hey, this is the meat falling off the bone right here. Man, it just makes me wanna. It makes me just wanna hang out with old Joseph there. Boy, just give me a moment. Just give me a moment. Whew. Now, when it seems like life is like hell, man, and it's all trouble, and it's like the trials and the fire, and all of it's just coming around and coming around you. Look, if the Lord is with you, what can He do? Well, man, what an amazing thing. What an amazing God. What an amazing God. He just going, all right, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, you got all this, you got all that. I got my little Joseph over here. You know, he's working over here in the confines of your prison after he just got put in there for no reason. But God sees, God knew, and there's a purpose, and there's a reason for all of this. There's a reason for all of this. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plentiful years, the earth produced abundantly. And he gathered up all the food of these 7 years, which occurred in the land of Egypt, and put the food in the cities. He put in every city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. Before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. Interesting. Manasseh and Ephraim have these meanings. 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end. And the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. But remember, they stored up all that food. They stored it all up, so don't trip. Even though, don't sweat. There's God's doing this for a reason, okay? Okay, because there's other people who are going to need that food, okay? When that famine has come, right? So, the 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come. As Joseph had said, there was famine in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, Go to Joseph. What he says to you, do. So when the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt, to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the earth. End of chapter 41. So, wow. All right. So go to Joseph. What he says to you, do. Pharaoh knew God was with Joseph. God was with Joseph. And they just had to end up opening the storehouses, just like Joseph had interpreted. Now, if this doesn't bring us a good sense of what God is like, I mean, let us use our minds here. Let us use our minds here. That when we're going through challenges and difficult times, hey, God knows. And if we put him first, he can lift us up to a better state, and at least in our hearts, even though sometimes it's hard to see around us. God, the Lord Jesus, who is God's Son, God's only begotten Son, he, when we put him in his right and proper place, hey, doesn't mean you're not going to go through some challenges. But one thing you can know is that He will be with you. And there's the comfort that God wants to bring. And His hand, we should always want to be in our lives. Struggling, suffering, and bringing joy in situations in our lives. All right. End of that chapter.